Welcome back to Panda Recaps. Today I will show you a drama film from 2006 titled The Pursuit of Happiness. Spoilers ahead. Watch out and take care. 1981, San Francisco. Chris Gardner is an earnest hardworking salesman, yet he is facing financial difficulties in his life. He has invested all his money in portable bone density scanners, which he personally sells to doctors. Although they are a better product than X-ray machines, they are also far more expensive, meaning that they are unnecessary luxury. He has to sell at least 2 scanners a month to make ends meet and another to pay the parking tickets on his towed car, and the problem is, he has not sold any for a while. It's part of his routine to send his 5-year-old son Christopher to a daycare and be berated by his wife Linda, who works double shifts, for not providing for his family and paying rent. Things look bleak. When they finish dinner at home, Chris notices Rubik's Cube, which was still a new toy at the time. Linda asks him if he has paid taxes and he replies that he needs to apply for another extension, which stresses her out even more before she goes back to her work. After Linda leaves, Chris continues to play with the Rubik's Cube and finds that it is quite easy to solve. The next day, as Chris is walking down the street, he notices a man in a Ferrari and asks him what he does for a living. He is a stockbroker and you have to be good with numbers and good with people. That's when Chris had an epiphany. Everyone walking out of the building looked so damn happy and he wanted to look that way too. The next morning, Chris tells Linda that he will be home late because he wants to apply to be a broker because he's good with numbers. Linda makes fun of this fact and thinks it is nonsense. He does not appreciate her distrust of him. Linda is bitter because she has to work double shifts and a laundry all the time, which is still not enough to cover their basic expenses, and they are currently 3 months behind on rent. They have another unresolved conflict. Afterwards, Chris goes to a brokerage firm to apply, but feels foolish going in with his scanner, so he leaves it with a street artist for safekeeping and even gives her $1. While applying for the job, he is handed an application for an internship when he sees the street artist run off with his scanner, prompting him to leave quickly. Unfortunately, the street artist manages to escape by train. Only 20 applicants are accepted for the internship, resulting in only one intern being hired at the end of the process. Since he does not have a higher education, he does not have high hopes of being selected from the application form. The next day, the news reports about the new toy and says that it is quite difficult to solve. It took a university professor about 30 minutes. He promises his wife to sell the scanner to ease her worries. On the way to the daycare, he teaches his son that happiness does not contain a Y, contrary to what is smeared on the daycare wall. He then makes his way to the Dean Witter brokerage firm and personally delivers his application to the head of HR, Jay Twistle. However, their meeting is brief as he is in a hurry. Outside, Chris arranges another sales meeting for his scanner. That's when he notices the street performer with a friend carrying his stolen device and angrily pursues him. He narrates that he spent his entire life savings on them and that losing one is like losing a month's worth of groceries. After chasing them, he finally gets his device back. However, he now has 2, which is a far cry from his earlier promise to sell 1. Later in the day, of course, Linda sees the 2 devices and is disappointed. After giving their son a basketball for his birthday, Chris tries to talk to Linda about what happened earlier with the scanners, but she isn't interested in his excuses. He tries to reassure her that everything will be okay, but she has long since given up hope, so Chris feels even more pressured because he has no one to stand by him in his time of need. Later, Chris approaches Jay, who is hailing a cab. He wants to sit down and talk with him, as he has no news about the application he submitted a month ago. Jay lets him share a ride since Chris is supposedly going to the same place. Chris talks about his hidden abilities and his determination to get the job done, while Jay focuses on the Rubik's Cube, not paying much attention to what Chris has to say, and just mutters that it's impossible to solve. Chris can solve it, but Jay is sure he cannot and gives him the cube to prove it. Just as they arrive, Chris has solved the cube, leaving Jay impressed and stunned. However, Chris is left to pay the fare, which he cannot afford. When the cab stops, he makes a run for it and apologizes at the same time. The driver chases him and says he will kill him. Frightened, he jumps on the first train, but unfortunately his hand gets stuck when the train door closes, and he leaves the device behind, making him devastated. That day, Chris calls Linda and apologizes for being late picking up Christopher. Angry that she missed her shift, she tells him they are leaving. When he gets home, he finds his wife and son gone. But just then he receives a call from Jay telling him that he wants to see Chris the day after tomorrow at the interview for the internship. Jay gives him his secretary's phone number, but because there is no pen and paper nearby, he memorizes the number and goes to a nearby store to write it down. The next day, Chris angrily confronts Linda, who has just dropped off their son at daycare. She tells him that she is just not happy with him anymore. He lets her go, calls her weak, and says that Christopher will stay with him. Afterwards, Chris picks up his son from daycare and says that he will now stay with him. In the evening, the The landlord demands the rent, he cannot wait any longer. Chris pleads to give him an extension, but the landlord is adamant. He gives Chris a week to move out and he has to paint the walls as payment. The next day, while painting the walls, he hears a knock at the door. It is the police. They take him to the station, where he is forced to pay his parking tickets. He writes a check for all the money he has left, but it cannot be verified until 9:30 tomorrow morning and he is forced to wait here. Chris has no choice but to call Linda to take care of their son while he's gone all night. She agrees on the condition that she will bring him back late tomorrow. The following day, Chris sprints to the job interview at Dean Witter's, still in his dirty, paint-stained clothes. When he arrives at the interviewers, they are all disappointed to see him dressed like a garbage man. Without sugarcoating it, he explains that he was arrested for not paying his parking tickets. As the interview progresses, the potential supervisor is not impressed with him and asks what Chris would think if he hired a guy who shows up for an interview without a shirt on. He must have had on some really nice pants, and everyone bursts into laughter. As Chris is leaving, Jay approaches him and congratulates him on getting the internship, but there's a problem. Although he hounded him for the internship, it's an unpaid position for the first 6 months. Given the change in circumstances, Chris has to think about it. Jay is upset and tells him that he needs to know Chris's answer by the end of the day. His only resource for the 6 months would be his 6 scanners, which he could still try to sell. If he sold them all, he and his son could make ends meet. Later in the day, Linda finally arrives with Christopher. She tells him that she is going to New York to work as a waitress at her sister's cafe, and that she wants to take Christopher with her. Chris says that he will stay with him. She wants to know what he will do for a living, and he reveals that he got the internship at Dean Witter's. She is still skeptical, but she knows Chris will take care of their son. Chris then calls Jay, accepting the internship. A few days later, with the help of Chris's friend, father and son move a few blocks away to a nearby motel. Later, Chris and his son play basketball and Christopher tells his father that he dreams of going pro. However, Chris tells him that this is highly unlikely and that he should focus on something else, which makes him upset. Chris feels that he is suppressing his son's dreams the same way others suppress his. He then tells him that he cannot let other people tell him what he can and cannot do, not even his father. If you have a dream, go and get it. Period. Later, Chris manages to sell a machine and secure some money to get by. The next day, Chris sets off for the internship to learn about trading. Only one of the 20 candidates will get the job. During the 10-minute lunch break, Chris runs into Mr. Frome, but their conversation is cut short when Chris sees the device he lost earlier in the subway. He tries to chase after it, but is hit by a car. He is fine, but loses his shoe in the process and returns with only one shoe. Over the next few days, Chris is not appreciated by his office manager and he is ordered around to do demeaning favors for him. He is left feeling underrated and unappreciated, but he holds his head high and tries his best. Every day is stressful because he has to pick up his son from daycare and has a long drive home that leaves him exhausted, and being behind on rent doesn't make it easier. Whoever brought the most money after 6 months was usually hired. Others stay till 7, but he is Christopher, so he has to do in 6 hours what they do in 9. After 2 months, Chris is not having much success with his call sheet, so he decides to skip the line and go for the big fish, a CEO. He gets an opportunity to get a meeting with him in 20 minutes. Overjoyed, he runs to the meeting when his office manager stops him and asks him to move his car. Unable to find a parking spot and later caught in a traffic jam, he misses the arranged meeting. He is even more frustrated when he sees a parking ticket. That evening, Chris asks his son to come with him on a sales trip tomorrow and that they might go to a football game afterwards. The next morning they go to the home of the CEO, Mr. Ribbon, whose meeting Chris missed earlier. He thanks him for the opportunity to meet him and apologizes for missing it. Mr. Ribbon then invites the two to a football game so they can talk. Chris jumps at the opportunity and they go to the football game with Mr. Ribbon and his son. During the game, Mr. Ribbon tells Chris that there is no shot he will accept Dean Witter managing his funds. The upside of this encounter is that Chris can talk to Mr. Ribbon's business friends and they leave him their contact info. After 4 months, Chris has sold all his scanners and things seem to be going well. Until one day a letter brings him back to earth. The IRS seized all his funds for unpaid taxes, leaving him with only $21.33. He is broke and again behind on rent. He visits his friend who still owes him some money. Chris is frustrated when his friend considers the debt settled for helping him move 2 blocks to the motel. While in a park with his son, he notices the homeless man carrying his device and retrieves it. They then head from place to place to sell the device, only to find out that it's broken, but the doctor agrees to buy it when it's fixed. That night they return to the motel, but because of unpaid rent they have been thrown out. From sheer exhaustion, Christopher throws a tantrum and Chris loses his temper. They have to find another place to stay. They end up in a subway where Chris tells his son that this device is actually a time machine, and after they push the button, he pretends that they have been transported back to the time of the dinosaurs and they are cavemen and need to find a cave to hide in. Christopher willingly goes along with this idea and they end up holing up in a bathroom. While his son is sleeping, Chris breaks down because he does not know what to do next. The next day they go to a homeless shelter and are lucky to be the last ones in. After Chris tucks in his son, he attempts to fix the device. They cannot leave their belongings at the shelter, so Chris comes to work each day exhausted and carrying his things. He has improved his communication skills because he had to finish his work quickly to get in line for the shelter. Not long after, Chris takes the internship exam and finishes with ease. He was second to only one guy, who turns out didn't see that he has to write an essay on the back of the paper. Outside, he runs into Mr. Frome, who has forgotten his wallet and asks Chris if he can lend him $5. Although he has hardly anything, he lends him the money. That day they do not get a place to stay and have to sleep on a train. The next morning, Chris sells his blood to buy a part he needs to fix the device. At the shelter, Christopher asks if Mom left because of him. Chris assures him that he had nothing to do with it, to which his son tells him that he is a good father. With the new parts, Chris manages to repair the device, and the next day he successfully sells it, making enough money to stay in a hotel. After the stress has subsided, the two immediately fall asleep. Chris is working hard to get as many clients as possible before the end of the internship. The day before the results are announced about who will get the permanent job, Jay tells Chris that no matter what the results are, he has done a great job. This makes him feel uneasy. He is then called in by the office manager to the office, where Jay and Mr. Frome are waiting for him. All nervous, he tries to crack a few jokes about wearing a new shirt. Mr. Frome tells him to wear it tomorrow as well, since he got the job. Fighting back tears, he thanks the board and Mr. Frome gives him back the $5 he borrowed. Chris talks about this part of his life being called happiness, because all the struggles he endured are finally paying off. No more worries, no more stress. He had no one but Christopher by his side the whole time and he made it. Then he runs straight to the daycare and gives his son a big hug. A few years later, Chris founded his own investment company and in 2006, he sold a minority stake in his brokerage firm, which made him a millionaire. The end. Thank you for watching. Subscribe if you'd like to see more videos like this.